Greetings from Alaska, everyone. I wanted to share with you an experience me and a buddy Brian had back in 1998. We had gone up to Third Lake, which is in the TIKCHIK State Park. You go up Lake Nagik, up the Aguluwok River to Lake Nurka, and then you wrap around Lake Nurka to Beverly, and there's a smaller river that leads up to the third one, or Lake Beverly. Or on the map they may have flipped it. We always called it Third Lake. Regardless, I believe it's Beverly or Nurka. Um, we were towed up there by my cousin Spencer. Brian was an import. He worked in downtown Dillingham at one of the stores doing shipping or something like that at the time. Well, it was our great idea. We're gonna get dropped off with a canoe and we're gonna paddle our butts all the way back. And they're just lakes. It's Alaska. We were prepared, but just we didn't anticipate how much work it was going to be paddling that freaking canoe across huge lakes. Anyway, we were young. It was 1998, so we get towed all the way up there, and uh, my cousin Spencer stayed the night with us the first night, right on the beach. We whooped it up. We were young, party, woo woo. Nothing happened that night. Hangover the next day was horrific. I digress. So we're rehydrating and we start our mission. Spencer takes off. He agrees to tow us across to the other side before he went up the lake and then cut down the river. Well, we were in no condition to be doing paddling at that time anyway, so it gave us a little respite to kind of rehydrate and get to feeling better, pop some ibuprofen kind of thing, maybe a little hair of the dog. So we get across there and he takes off and we canoe and we get to the mouth of where the river feeds down into Lake Nurka. And as we're going along, uh, we kept hearing blink, blink, and we just assumed it was little fish jumping. No biggie. We're about, 4 hours into our paddling, and we're just got to this mouth of the river that's going to lead us down to Second Lake, Lake Nurka. And we're pondering because we feel like utter crap, pulling out there and just making a go of it before getting into any kind of fast water and all that kind of stuff. Um, we wanted to be 100% because it was just us two in a canoe. We had, we didn't have no sat phone or EPIRB or any of that crap. We were young and dumb, and we were going to make a go of it. So as we're contemplating this, we kept hearing this plunk, plunk, and we assumed it was little minnows or small fish jumping in the water. I mean, it's what we're in Alaska. That's what they do. And so we're discussing, a good spot. It was pretty thick and brushy, so we decided with the current of this little river, we'll just go down and we'll camp on Lake Nurka, and that because we're about 2 hours paddling time with the current of that little river. So we decided to go that route. We hop in, we're paddling away, we get some movement going so we could stop paddling because we were whoop dogs. We whooped it up. We were just it was a miserable first part of the trip. Didn't get much better, but it was miserable. Yeah, I digress. So we make our way through. And what's weird about going down this little river, it's just a couple miles long, mile and a half, something like, not very much at all. So what ends up happening is the whole way down this little river, we kept hearing louder and louder plunks, plunks every so often. It was very random. There wasn't any kind of cycle to it. Well, that changed once we got down to Lake Nurka and we drug up on shore. We're setting up camp. We're about 45 minutes into setting up camp, and we hear something horrific straight across the lake. It was a sound. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a growl. It was a sound. That's the best I can express it. It didn't have a tone to it that I could say, oh, that was an owl imitation, or that was a fox imitation. Nothing like that. It was just it sounded animalistic, but I couldn't pinpoint what kind of animal at that point. So we were discussing it. We were well armed, at least, you know, for what we had at the time, we were good. And we discussed what could be making that sound. Now we got all our stuff sprawled out. We're camping. We're not going anywhere. This sound came from the other side of the lake. We'll be good. There's some dead driftwood, and there, we had some other provisions. We'd get a good fire going. We'll be all right. So we dismissed the sound. It was on the other side of the lake anyway, and we'll go through the Narrows before we get to the Aguluwok River anyway, and we'll bypass that area. We'll canoe down this side of the lake and then cut across. Problem solved. We go on with our afternoon. This is land of the midnight sun. So 10 p.m. we still had daylight. We still had the sun on the horizon. It was just starting to get behind some of the Wood River Mountains. So it's beautiful. I mean, so gorgeous. Slight breeze keeping the mosquitoes off you. Pristine water, crystal clear. I can't even. It was great. So we forget about the noise. We're just chilling. We're getting ready to eat. Being the land of the midnight sun, it was like 11:30, 12, going into 1 before it really even got dusk-like. It never fully got dark that time of year. So as we discuss getting to bed early and sleeping off the rest of the hangover and getting moving the next day, he had work the day after the next, and I had something else going on that I had to tend to. So we decide, yeah, we'll call it a night early. We do. This guy snored like no one's business. I thought the night before was just because he was drunk. I don't know how he sleeps. It kept me up all night. I went halfway, at least a good 100 yards up the beach and tucked up under some grass that laid down just to get away from the snoring. Anyway, I didn't get much sleep. And I remember about 3:34 in the morning, from the same spot across the lake, I heard a very low-toned, nothing high-pitched about it, just a kind of a moaning kind of sound, like a real weird, almost like a moose call, but very prolonged, drug out, and held at that octave, at that note and volume. Just it seemed like a good 25 seconds, and I was like, that's definitely not good. Not good. So as I'm laying there, I get out of my sleeping bag. I pulled the rifle out that I was carrying with me, that I had in the sleeping bag, and I drag it back over to our campsite. The whole time I'm contemplating, this was before any outright attack, where I had to put shots on one of these things. So at that point, they would just usually make noise, run off to distract us, or there may be movement around us. But usually when you start leaving and get out of there, all that stuff stops, and you can go about your business. So I wake up Brian. I'm like, hey, dude, there's a noise. It's the hairy man. He laughs. He was like, oh, the hairy man. Yeah, right. You've been drinking again. I was like, no, dude. Listen, we got to get up. We got to go. It was plenty light enough. I mean, geez, the mosquitoes were already out. The sun was out. Anyway. So as he's getting up and moving, it makes a noise again. This time a full-on 3-octave scream from a low grumbling growl mixed with a normal sound woman scream to the highest pitched like squeal. It just, the whole scale. We were across a lake. The lake had to have been half-mile wide at that point, roughly, give or take. I never measured it or looked into it, but I would assume it was about a half mile. We still, we didn't feel it in our chest, but it was in surround by sound. It echoed through that whole valley in between those mountains. If you ever been back up in there, you know they're just like fjords in certain places and damn thing. And it just gorgeous. A lot of sheer rock and stuff like this. So it echoed around like an amphitheater. And immediately we're like, yeah, we'll go. We'll definitely go. Now, Brian's eyes at this point are humongous. Hey, how do we do with these? What's the, what do we do in this situation? I said, what we're doing now, we're packing up, getting the hell out of here. I mean, duh. Why do you think I said pack it up? That's protocol one. Let's go. And we had the canoe right there. I was trying to calm him down because he was really starting to freak out. Understandably so. It's jarring. It's really, it's not the position you want to be in. So he's trying to carry this gun and load stuff up in the canoe. No, I laugh because it's 2020 hindsight, laugh or cry. But the image, I wish I had that on camera. It was like a comedy of errors. He was dropping the rifle. He was getting sand all over it. At one point, I had to slow him down. Go sit down, empty that rifle, and clean it. He had dropped it in this gravelly sand stuff on that beach like 3 times at this point within 10 minutes. Nervous. Now, after that long scream, there was a succession of other screams further back to our east, like it would be going towards the Nushagak River from where we were, but the Nushagak's way, way away from us at this point. I'm just giving a general direction east. So this little sounding off happens. It was like a chain reaction down this valley, and it was really creepy because anyone that was there in '98, if you're watching this and you were in that area, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It just seemed like it was a continuing echo, but it was a different scream. So there was about 4 or 5 of them that were heard in just a brief time, and then it came back up the valley and stopped after the original screamer across the lake screamed another time. This time it was a very short, like a barky kind of. I don't do it any justice, so don't take that example. Sorry about the jumping screen. I'm doing this on my laptop, waiting for some equipment issues. Anyway, so panic level for him goes way up, and I'm trying to calm him down. Like, hey, dude, I know you've only been in Alaska for a short while, and you need to calm down because you need to have your head about you. We're about to be in cold water. You can't be freaking out like that when we're in the canoe. We're safe. Calm down. He's like, okay, it's just, he's like, you heard it. I was like, yeah, I'm right here, man. Let's just calm down. Let's do it right. We don't want stuff. We're okay. It was across the lake and a ways, and we're going the opposite way anyway. So hey, no biggie, dude. Calm down. So I don't know how he even lived in Alaska that long. In all fairness to Brian, I think the reality of what was going on was sinking in as he was packing and getting stuff ready, and I think it can be really overwhelming. The thing that really stands out is what appears to be an organization going on with these things that we're totally unaware of. To a lot of people, it's just repetitive howls. Who knows what they're actually saying to each other? Let me finish this experience me and Brian had, and maybe it'll better explain, because it was almost like a coordination of things going on. So we get everything packed up. We ended up, he had one of these little roll up, look like a yoga mat, but you put them under your sleeping bag. He had one of those, and he was done with it. He was, I don't want to pack that. It didn't help. Something along those lines. I think he still had a really bad hangover and was just like, screw it, I don't want that. And I was like, look, we packed it in, we're freaking packing it out, dude. This is native land. You're not just gonna leave bullshit laying on a beach. Roll it up. So uh, he had actually started vomiting, and so I went over. I rolled up the little mat, and I used it to sit on because those we had a Coleman canoe, 16-foot marine version, hard ass seats. So I had padding. Well, he calms down. He drinks some. I think we had Gatorade or something like that. Something with some electrolytes, and we're still right there on the beach. We're fully loaded, but he wasn't in no condition to paddle yet. He wasn't hyperventilating, but his whole mood changed. And I was trying to cheer him up. I was like, hey, look, and if it makes you feel any better, they come running, I'll shoot you in the leg first. And he didn't like that. But I was trying to get his mind just to break loose. Don't get that tunnel vision and freak out. Those screams were jarring. That was loud as shit. Um, the way it sounded through. Now, at this point, I'm thinking uh, they had been building. I don't know if it was a lodge or someone's cabin on the Aguluwok River. I know since top of the Aguluwok Lodge has opened up, but I don't remember exactly how long they've been in service as a lodge, flying, fishing, all that kind of stuff. Great, great place, don't get me wrong. Um, but in my mind, I'm thinking that's the closest place where potential other people are. Um, so I'm in the back of my mind, I got that. We decide now's a good time to go because there was some kind of movement up on the mountain behind us. It was just movement of some. It could have been a rock tumbling down. It could have been just some old growth. Irrelevant. We're having none of it. It was time to go. And so we get to paddling, and we're about 50 feet offshore. For the first little ways, he was sweating like a pig. I was sweating too, but just not quite that bad, just from getting all the alcohol out of the system. Well, we're about 2 hours into this paddling and we're not making much headway. At least it doesn't seem, because we still got a good ways to go and still cross the lake. I'm talking to him, cheering him on. He's drinking his Gatorade every so often. Well, he gets the bright idea. He wants to drink fresh lake water. And I'm like, no, dude, you'll get that beaver fever and you're screwed. You'll be all right for a day or two, but if we get stuck out here, you don't want that. So he hears better of it, and we had this gallon jug of water, but it had been sitting out in the sunlight, so it was kind of warm. So I tied off a little string to it and let it hang in the lake as we paddled along, chill it out real quick. So we do that, and we're talking, and I'm trying to get him to eat something. We had these little Nature Valley granola bars, and I'm like, hey, eat some of these, get your energy up, because we may have to fight this canoe going down the Aguluwok. Uh, it's pretty fast moving in spots. It's got a lot of rocks. So, I wanted him in the best condition. And so as he turns around and he's facing me, by this point we're in the middle of the lake and it is beautiful. Not a cloud in the sky. You can hear the birds off on both sides of the lake making noise, chirping. Just it's such a beautiful scene. We calm back down from the morning's activities of the hooting and all the howling. So as he's telling me something about his shipping job, Northern Air Cargo deliveries or some crap. It was mundane, just small talk. He was like, we should have some shots. And I was like, no, we're not, dude, no. Why'd we leave where we were? We needed to. And drinking is not something we need to be doing right now. Well, let's get somewhere. There's the A-frame on the Aguluwok. It's a cabin. We can do it there. Bet. He agrees. We start paddling again, and as we're reaching the I guess they call it Nunavutchik Bay, but it's just basically a wider part of the mouth of the river that goes in between two mountains. It's actually really beautiful. I'm not trying to dismiss it. It is absolutely stunningly beautiful, but it kind of tapers down into the mouth of the Aguluwok. So as we come around the bend from Lake Beverly or Nurka, I have to look at the map. We call it Second Lake. So coming down around Second Lake there, we decide that he needs to use the bushes. Um, Something he couldn't wait for because of some of the effects of the drinking the night before. He had to vacate in different ways. So I find a good stretch of beach open and some brush where he can go handle his business. Now, on either side of the lake is it's not vertical, but it's steep. The terrain gets steep real fast. Not a lot of big trees in through there, just a lot of scrub alders and willows, things of this nature. A few, like black spruce, but not much as far as vegetation, just mainly bushes. So he goes and he's doing his thing, and I'm looking across where the sunlight was hitting the mountain on the other side. It's just so stunningly beautiful, and I'm looking for game. I'm looking for any critters, caribou, woodland caribou, whatever. Just checking out the scene. Well, I hear him yelling something, and he's a little bit away. He's a good, 40 yards away in some brush, and he yells, "Knock it off." I said, "Who?" I screamed out, "Who are you talking to?" And he was like, "Get over here." And I was like, it seemed kind of weird. So I was like, "Hey, I was teasing him. I said, "Hey, I ain't gonna help you, wipe. You gotta handle your own business. You're a big boy." He was like, "No, no. Are you messing with me?" And I was like, "Dude, I'm over here checking out, looking for game. What's going on?" He said, "Did you just throw a stick at me?" I said, "Dude, the last thing I would do to any man is throw a stick at him while he's crapping in the woods. It's just not gonna happen." And so he had this real concerned look on his face. And I told him, "Hey, where'd it come from?" He pointed up the mountain. I'm like, "There's no way it came from there. There's nowhere to hide." He said, "It seemed like it came from up there." I said, "Okay." I think it was arced higher from a different position. But anyway, so I said, "You know what? It could just be a simple that was stuck in this bush here and it fell down." He was like, "Okay, yeah, that's probably what it was." And he was saying that to appease me, but I could tell he was really unsure about it. The poor guy was crapping and had this thing thrown at him. Uh, uh, anyway, so I go back down to the canoe and I get the binoculars and I start glassing that whole area and then back down the tree line and the shoreline. I'm just curious. I honestly, I know we were hyped up on paranoia because of the howls up on the upper lake, but I was more like looking for game at that time, and I honestly thought it had been stuck in that bush and fell from there. I figured we had far outpaced anything going on from those howls and those screams. We had outpaced it, I thought. So I'm glassing around, and I couldn't make out anything. And I've glassed my whole life. I'm 46. I know what I'm doing when it comes to hunting something. I spot and stock. I don't just sit in one place and glass all day. I get out on the game trails. I go hunting. I go find it. Um, but that's just what I'm used to. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with sitting spot and stock, that kind of glassing for like brown bear, but sitting there, it's rare you're going to easily pick out a caribou walking. Anyway, I digress. So I know what to look for. I know all the movements, blah, 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 blah. So I see nothing. And this is a little past midday. Um, I didn't wear a watch at the time and there was no cell phones. This was 98. So Brian finishes doing whatever he was doing off in the bush because he moved, because I guess he was just getting ready to do his business when the stick thing happened. So he moves. He's in a different part of the little bushes to handle his business. So I take the binoculars away from my face where I'm glassing, and where we're at, um, as I'm facing this mountain in front of me, to my immediate left, the bank of the lake kind of hooks around to the right. If I was to turn that way, it hooks around going towards the right, going the direction off to the left side of the mountain, the way I was facing it. And at the bottom of that slope is where trees start and run back along that upper part of the lake. We were coming down into this little narrows area with the mountains on either side with very little vegetation. So where that vegetation tapered off and ended coming around that corner, as I pull the binoculars down, I see this stick go flying. And immediately I knew something was wrong with it. But in my mind, I'm like, it wasn't a very big stick. So to be flying with that much force and distance, you could hear it. It had to be thrown harder than I could have thrown it, and I'm not a weak guy. So I laugh because it's really not funny, but it's funny. This stick lands right at Brian's feet. Second time in a row. Within moments, he's trying to crap in the woods, and something threw a stick at him. Like, that guy, yeah, he's another one that thinks we're crazy. So he comes out of there, and luckily he had hurried up and did his thing. He was motivated to get out of there anyway. So I guess the stick landed, from what he said, right as he finished tending his business. And so he's running from behind these bushes because I'm going over to grab a rifle out of the canoe. Um, Something was off. I wanted to have a firearm nearby. But he's running around these bushes trying to pull up his pants and stuff at the same time. It was, that poor guy. He was not having a good time of it. So I grabbed the rifle, and I'm trying to look back up from where that stick was thrown to see if I could see any movement. I was a nervous jumble myself. I was putting the binoculars up to my eyes and then grabbing the rifle scope, and I just didn't like the feeling. I was real uneasy. So I tell Brian, hey, dude, let's just load up. I saw that stick fly from over there towards you. And he goes, yeah, I watched it because I guess from his angle, he heard it before he saw it, and it came and landed right in front of him. So yeah, he's motivated. He can paddle now. I'm telling you, that boy, he was digging. So we're paddling towards where this thing funnels down into the Aguluwok River to go down to Lake Aleknagik and Sunshine Valley and Bear Bay and stuff, where we were going to end our trip and get picked up from there. Well, as we're paddling along, there was a spot where there was some logs cleared, where they were going to build this lodge or add on to something. There was a partial structure there of something. I don't remember exactly what. We're coming along that, and things are narrowing down, but there's no trees. The trees start again up in front of us, where the mouth of the Aguluwok River starts, but it was fairly, shrub free at the time. Some small willows, so we could see very easily. So in that wooded area where they just cleared it, it looked like three stumps, taller stumps, were there. And as we're paddling, Brian starts screaming back at me, hey, look over there in that clearing. And I look, and I just glance, and I'm looking, and it looked like legit tree stumps. And he was like, hand me the binoculars. I'm like, all right, here you go. He looks, and he immediately, he dropped the damn binoculars in the frickin' lake. Brian, if you watch this, you owe me some frickin' binoculars, dude. Anyway, he drops my binoculars in the lake and is scrambling to grab a gun. I'm like, whoa, calm down. He's gonna tip us in this frickin' canoe. It's all the gear we got. Anyway, so I yell at him, calm the hell down, you're gonna tip us. And he's trying to get this gun, and he can't even get the words out. He just keeps gesturing back towards that clearing, and I look over, and one of the tree stumps moves, and I'm like, oh shit. Uh, it startled me because anyone, even with wilderness experience, you glance over, tree stump. Yeah, there's other ones. You know, it just looked like a small little, someone cleared a small spot. So it piqued my interest. So I grabbed the rifle I had that had a scope, 3x9. I maxed it out, and I started looking over that way. And sure enough, uh, uh, this thing had a grizzled coat to it. Um, real weird gait to its walk. Uh, it was going over terrain and stepping over things as it was moving, but it looked right back at me like it was looking right down that scope into my eye. Um, had a very sharp, intense look to its eye, and I'll never forget. Because at that distance with the 3x9, it would be the equivalent of like a little bigger than what you would watch Patty walk across the creek there on that one footage. Just for reference, as far as distance through that 9 power. Well, I could tell it's looking right back at me, and it gets into the trees and disappears. And so I turned to scan back to the other 2 stumps I saw. They weren't there. There was no stumps. As a matter of fact, um, been to that same area a couple years later, and there has never been a tree in that spot. And I digress. Irrelevant. So these things are gone. Now we're getting on into not it's not going to get fully dark, not that time of year, but in the shade of the trees it gets pretty freaking dark. And we had no flashlights. We didn't anticipate needing them. So land of the midnight sun, you know. So we get to the mouth of the Aguluwok, and we're discussing what was going on with the movement. And Brian's very intense at this point, and with genuine concern. He's like, we're not stopping till we get to Aleknagik. I said, calm down. I'm with you. I'm not, we're not going to camp right here. We'll continue. He was like, dude, I can't sleep knowing these things are around. I said, look, I'm with you. I understand you 100%. And we were young, but he was a grown man of age, I should at least say. It's hard seeing young men or any man like really lose that state of alpha, I guess. I don't know. It's hard to explain. It's not like it broke Brian or anything like that. It's just he was so scared. It was muddling his thought process. That's what it is. He couldn't focus on protecting himself from that danger. So I tell him, hey, look, it's going to be all right. We're armed. It's not going to get completely dark. And the Aguluwok's fast moving, and we'll focus on that, and we'll get out of here. He's like, all right. And I could tell he wasn't really feeling it. Hold on, give me just a second here. Okay, so we get going on down the river, and he's motivated paddling, and I'm with him. However, he was in the lead, and I was supposed to be steering in the back, but he was being a little too aggressive with it, so I had to calm him down a little more. Hey, we're in the current, we're good. We have firearms, we're okay. They weren't chasing us, they just went off into the trees somewhere. There was no noises, no aggression from them. They went on their way. Calm down. And plus, we're getting away from them now. We're moving. So he calms down, and he allows me to steer the canoe properly, and it's turning into a nice, peaceful, kind of thing. So some time is passing, and we can hear the sound of an outboard coming upriver. A lot of people use their jet motors because it's a shallow river with a lot of rocks in certain spots. And it's one of these rivers that changes its channel little by little each year when everything freezes up and then thaws and then ice moves out. It kind of digs different dredges in the bottom of the river. So it's one of those. So we hear it coming, and we can hear it for quite some time before we see it. And this thing comes around one of the bends, and it's rooster tailing. I think it was a thunder jet or something like that. And they cruise right on past us like we're waving, trying to get their attention, just give them the heads up. Hey, you believe us or not, but there was some screaming, some crazy stuff going on up there. Be aware. They just ripped past us, so we couldn't warn them nothing. Well, this guy, he's a great guy, Brian. He immediately gets concerned. He's like, "Is there someone we can contact and warn everyone out here?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's when we get to Eleknagik, we'll run and tell someone, okay? We'll see how that goes." And he saw my point. He's like, "Okay, you know." I said, "Best thing to do is just calm down, and we'll tell those that we know, and just calm down." Of course, we're going to tell someone, but going to the authorities, we're going to get laughed out of the building. If not, hey, go pee in a cup. So we continue paddling, and there was no ominous feeling. There was no feelings of anxiety. I wasn't on a heightened level of like feeling insecure, being nervous, and essentially, I didn't have any of those jitters. He was calming down because some time had passed. It's a fast moving river, but we're off to the one side, and we're trying to maintain a certain level of control while we're going down this river. Um, we're coming down. We're just past the halfway point, I would say, and we hear the jet boat again. And it gosh, I don't know how far I could have made in that time. Honestly, I wasn't paying attention, but it sounded like the same jet boat. We heard it fire up. We thought it was coming back towards us, and then we heard it going away from us again. And then we heard it coming back down river again. But it was still out of sight. We could just hear this happening in the distance. So, we both are dragging our oars, kind of slowing down to listen. What's that? I was like, hey man, let's get on shore, because I don't know if these fuckers are drunk and gonna, potentially hit us coming back down river. I'm not, it was a green canoe. I'm in camo, you're in camo. Dude, we're not sticking out here. Let's get off this river for a minute. We'll chill out, you know, sip on a little something, calm down. Let's get off this river. So we come up to this little bend, perfect spot. It had a little eddy. We could pull off without a strong current and, have to fight any current. And that's the last thing you want to do on a tippy canoe. So we get out, and we're still hearing this jet boat. It's ripping, like, and then you could hear it turn around, whoa, power down, it's making a shit ton of noise upriver. If we're sitting there for about 20-25 minutes, and I know we're probably a good hour from the A-frame on the Aguluwok River. So I tell them, hey, if they're not going to be coming down the river, let's just take this opportunity. We'll get back on the water, and we'll get down to the A-frame, start a nice fire there, and have a place to tuck into, and just chill. Grant you, he's still nursing a hangover pretty hard, and I was still feeling a little but nothing major, So sweating like a pig though, sweating like a pig. Um, we continue on. The whole time you can hear this jet boat ripping back and forth, and then as we get back on the water and start our journey again, jet boat shut off. We don't hear it anymore. And we didn't hear it go out of the distance of sound range or any of that stuff. It just stopped running. So we float on down, uneventful, beautiful. Uh, didn't hear the jet boat at all. none of that stuff. It was just beautiful Alaska nature. Saw a couple bears, a couple nice coastal brownies. Anyway, one sow, and then I'd say about a 4-year-old male. Beautiful, beautiful strawberry blonde looking coats. No rub marks. Oh, beautiful. Would have been beautiful rugs. Anyway, we pull out at the A-frame. Anyone who's been to the A-frame of the Aguluwok, it's literally an A-frame cabin with a little loft in there. It's not very big. It's a state cabin. You got to have reservations for it, blah, blah, blah. So it's right on this little spit, just basically on the main first bend of the Aguluwok before you get to Aleknagik. Beautiful, just gorgeous. When the red salmon run, they just swimming right out there off the bank in that little eddy. It just looks like blood red water from all the red salmon. It's gorgeous. It wasn't that time of year yet, but it wouldn't have been long. Anyway, just beautiful natural Alaska, and that's where our mindset went back to, because the strangeness of the creatures in the distance, the howling and all that. By the time we got there and got everything unloaded, it had been a long day. I wouldn't say it wasn't on our mind, but we weren't holding on to it. We were starting to loosen up, have a couple drinks or whatever. Well, I'll never forget. We hear the jet boat fire up. This is about an hour after we'd been at the A-frame, so it was a good couple hours since we had heard it last fire up. And it's a little further away because we had been traveling away from that area, but we heard it fire up, power up, go back and forth a couple times, and then we heard it coming back downriver. Now, at that distance, it sounded like a very low drone, but when you've been out in those elements and you've heard it enough times, you know what you're hearing. You're hearing the boat go back and forth. So I don't know what was going on, but again, it started that same thing, going back and forth. And this time it was like it was doing it back and kind of one step forward, two back, one step forward, two back, coming down the river. So it sparked our curiosity. So we built up the bonfire. We're expecting company at some point. Stop in, say hi, maybe something along those lines. So we're out there, we're having a good time. We have firearms out, and it's a clearing. They keep it cut back, usually a good distance from the bank there, just around that cabin. Just for bear protection, you got to be able to see. However, we're sitting there, and it's darker now, and it's dark in the trees, but we could see very easily our open area around us. We didn't need spotlights or anything like that. It just wasn't very great visibility. So in the trees, Brian says, "Oh, I seen something moving over there upriver, up on our side of the bank. I saw something moving." I was like, "Calm down, calm down. Don't start panicking about something moving in the trees. I don't." Anyway, so this whole time, this boat's making its way down the river, and finally it just continues coming down, and it sounds like it's flying. I mean, it sounded like it was wide open. Well, we hear them, and as they come into view, we had to go out on the spit to look upriver, and it kind of slight hook, and then it hooks back off to our right. Well, they come around that, they're sliding sideways, it's a jet boat, and then they straighten out, and they're coming straight down the middle, and they notice us, and they're flying. So they power down immediately. Woo! They start slowing down, and they pass us. And then he circles and then powers up, comes back up and around into that little eddy area where our canoe is tied off. 3 dudes on there. One of them was, I think he was actually with the Nushagak Lodge. He had just taken the Wood River on up to Aleknagik and then went up the Aguluwok. Yeah, hey, make your money. But they throw a line to me and I tie them off, and they jump out of that boat freaking out. One guy stayed on the back of the boat, and he's looking, and he's got this spotlight, and it's not doing much. It's really not, but he's shining back up the river, and he goes, "The damn thing jumped in the water. It jumped in the water after us, man." And immediately my mind goes, we just saw those things earlier today. So I said, what's jumping at you? You guys, you see those two bears? And they're like, F the bears, man. These ain't no effing bears. I was like, what happened? Brian's immediately just spilling the beans. Oh, we saw that. We saw them over there. They were at the mouth of the Aguluwok before we came down and blah, 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 blah. I wasn't trying to, like, share at that point. I didn't know these guys, and let's hear what they got to say first. Well, anyway, he shows our hand or whatever, however you want to say it, and they just look at us, and they're like, "Is that why you were waving at us when we were going by?" And I was like, "Well, if you saw us waving at you, why not find out?" He goes, "Dude, I had clients, man." I was like, "Fair enough, man. Fair enough. Just, hey, we saw three. Thought they were tree stumps. Told him the whole thing." And he said, "We were following it back and forth." And then it all made sense. The turning around in the jet boat, he said he burned almost all their reserve fuel going back and forth because these things were running in the trees along the shoreline back and forth, screaming at him. I didn't hear any screaming. That jet boat was loud as shit. But, you know, they were freaked out. Shared a little alcohol with them. There was no further activity. Uh, Not even an errant owl hoot or none of that. But so these guys saw what we saw, and they tried to chase him back and forth. They didn't even have a gun with them. They didn't have a bear gun. I was like, man, you guys are slipping. This is Alaska. It's not a joke. Bears will eat you. So, hairy men aside, but I I could understand the curiosity, but after a couple times of them running back and forth and they still ain't like ran away, what are you inviting at that point, I mean, the one guy was like, it jumped in the water. You only get so many warnings with these things, so just be aware in the woods. Um, some may think this sounds outlandish, is just stuff that happens out in the deep woods, and it's some crazy stuff, and a lot of people they want to dismiss it as like some kind of make believe thing. There's nothing make believe about any of these creatures out here. Nothing. Um, and I understand skepticism. That's a very good thing to have. But to me, for me, when I go filming my documentaries, I'm not worried about evidence per se. I'm gonna look for stuff, of course. That's the whole point. What I'm getting at for me personally is I don't need to see more. I don't feel they're our friends. I don't, not up here in Alaska, and I'm only speaking for what I know of in Alaska. I know nothing about the lower 48, so anyone that may have progress in that department, hey, bless you. I haven't seen it here in Alaska. It's only been very cunning, predatory type behaviors. Even the most mundane of encounters, there's something not right about it. Anyway, but yeah, just be careful in the woods. Documentary is going to be filming soon. Uh, I'll post the heads up on. It's going to be a 3-part, just because of the vast distances we have to go to get to some of these places. There's going to be far too much footage to just have some 4 or 5 hour long thing. People would lose interest. So we're going to do it in sections, and that'll be starting real soon. It's staying mid 40s, low 50s in the day. Still getting down to 25 at night, and we don't want to sleep in that. But beware in the woods. Um, Even if you don't believe my story, I don't care. Just hear what I said. Take it with a grain of salt if you want. Always move away from these things if you hear some strange screams. Don't test it. Um, Typically, when you see one, it wants you to see it. and it's not the only one. I mean, we were watching the one move by the mouth of the Aguluwok and had no idea the other two moved. Perfect example of distraction while others do something. Mind your P's and Q's. You just be safe.